When I was on the way to the airport in Bangkok, I was fascinated by a massive billboard next to the highway. It was an airplane ad, an airplane flying over a collection of global architectural icons. The usual suspects, the Statue of Liberty, Big Ben, Eiffel Tower, Colosseum, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Pyramid, the Taj Mahal, the Great Wall of China, Sydney Opera House. It was beautiful, something like this, not exactly the ad. It was beautiful, uplifting. But then I thought there was something hidden, a hidden message in the ad. It was a profound story about our lives, about our modern lives, about the life of modern nomads, that we are in a frictionless, borderless world where we can travel enormous distances in a matter of hours and days. We are global citizens in ways our grandfathers and grandmothers were not. In a nutshell, the ad was an homage to globalization, or a flat world, to cite Thomas Friedman's description of our interconnected planet. Yet, I kept thinking about the ad and the complicated, not that innocent world that we inhabit. As we become global citizens, as we overcome old barriers and divisions, there has been a paradoxical opposite reaction. The fear of losing identity in a world where all lines are in a continual flux, where the world appears homogenized. Now, the question is, what is identity? By identity, I mean how we see ourselves in a world of communities, how we define ourselves as a people, how we fortify our position in the world by certain cultural traits, geographic attachments, social attitudes, lifestyles, eating habits, and many more. We seduce ourselves to believe that these rather preordained qualities define us, give us our identity. We seek to reinforce these identities in our daily lives, everything we do in our daily lives. The fear of sacrificing people, sacrificing identity, can provoke people to do all sorts of things, some exclusionary, some self-exclusionary, some elitist, some separatist, some nativist, some nationalist, some militant, some even violent. Consider the ongoing US gun control debate in the US. As much as it is about rights, the debate is also a great deal about identity, or rather, about constructing identity. In our anxious world today, refugees, migrants, the rich, the poor, black, white, brown, all people enter into a perpetual cultural vortex, producing all kinds of chemical reactions and social effects. The anxiety of loss of identity could morph into a perceived existential threat and ultimately produce the next generation of walls and divisions. One of the ironic effects of globalization, the global movement of ideas, capital, people, is the fear of losing identity, induced by an alleged loss of the original, the authentic, the pure, the national, the ethnic. This fear has provoked reactionary sentiments, repurposed to restore some form of idealized racial, ethnic, national, religious purity. Think of the proposed Mexico-US wall, mega wall rather. Is it a physical object, an idea, a metaphor, or a modern reincarnation of a persistent human fantasy of isolationism, protectionism across history? We can debate this forever. Consider Trayvon Martin's dead body on the sidewalk of a gated community at Sanford, Florida. Let's not forget, in a gated community. He was murdered in a gated community. Crossing the wrong gate could spur a fierce debate about our identity, racial identity, and the politics of self-defense. In your own town, you may have seen a gated golf club fortified in its aromatic exclusivity, or a high-end resort meant only for certain economic classes, or a beautifully designed school where you can't send your children because it's expensive. There are too many visible, invisible walls in our cities, in our societies. Consider some of the grim suburbs of Paris. They're called banlieues. Some claim that these banlieues are dystopic ghettos where many immigrants, North African immigrants, and their French-born children live, often without jobs. According to recent observers, Paris has become a classic tale of two cities, two antagonistic cities. One is French, the other not quite French. When they collide, when these two Parises collide, we see the tragedies of Charlie Hebdo. As we cross many borders, are we not building more walls? We have seen the collapse of Berlin Wall in 1989. In 2018, more walls are rising in the USA, Saudi Arabia, Hungary, Israel, India, and many other places, some visible, some invisible, some are uber visible. The social pathology of identity loss has become a key driver of policies, unfortunately, but mostly in cities, the proverbial melting pot of civilization, globalization, and ideologies. The fear of identity had direct or indirect special implications in our cities, producing a range of architectures of exclusion. So what can we do about it? What can we do about our cities? The social hazards of exclusionary identity is best mitigated in diverse, dynamic, and accessible public places where people of all economic classes, all economic strata come together to celebrate the idea of greater social good. It is time to rediscover some old-fashioned faith in the power of enlightened, people-centric design as a bulwark against isolationism. City planners can significantly reduce the exclusion of people by alleviating social inequality. They must create one city, not fractured into unequal economic zones and gated, privileged communities. The human story is best celebrated in the spaces of robust public engagement and culture. Here, Jama Al-Fana in Marrakesh, Morocco, one of the most fascinating places I have ever visited, where I found people of many nationalities. We must protect and cherish our public plazas, piazzas, zocalos, malls, promenades, and maidans, because they are the best expression of our democratic values. This is where we learn to become public and civic. We must continue the great humanist tradition of our public plazas. Here, the National Mall becomes the site of an anti-genocide platform, 1 Million Bones. The urbanist William White's study of pedestrian behavior in 1960s New York tells us an interesting story. He concluded that strangers start imagining themselves as a community when they have the opportunity to freely access public places with others. We can and should celebrate our differences while we remain engaged with others. Irrational fear dehumanizes us. It is not necessary. We don't need that kind of fear. We need empathy for ourselves and others. Most of all, we need to be curious about others. We can rejoice our differences only when we remain curious about others. There is no greater, more profound, more enlightening power than empathetic curiosity. Imagine yourself in the spacesuit of Neil Armstrong on July 20, 1969. The Eagle has just landed, and you said, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." Yes, this statement has become an artifact of American folklore, even a bit cliched, but there is still a lesson to be learned. Neil Armstrong offered the greatest verdict against insularity and most transcendental and almost spiritual statement about curiosity as a driver of human imagination, in this case, space exploration. To be curious is to be human and humane. Thank you.